Hello everybody, it's Writing Tutor Sarah here, and today we're going to talk about analyzing text, specifically the quotes in your paper. So I hope you enjoy my meme, and let's get into it. I have another meme. I have a lot of memes. I thought you guys would like this, because I know sometimes you kind of look at the text and you're like, well, what am I supposed to do with this? Well, hopefully we're going to answer those questions by the end of today. So, here are the principles of analyzing a passage. We want to make sure that we've got a thesis or topic sentence that indicates a basic observation or assertion about what we found out in the text. Usually that's something that answers our prompt from the professor. We want to make sure we're offering context for the passage, but also not offering too much summary. Analyzing isn't about summarizing the text, it's about finding new things to say about it that aren't blatantly said in the text. We're reading between the lines to find an answer that no one has found before. We want to make sure we cite the passage, of course, using the correct format. And then we're going to follow the passage with some combination of the following elements. We're going to discuss what happens in the passage very briefly and why it's significant to the piece as a whole or to your thesis as a whole. You're going to consider what it said. Specifically, you want to consider things that are more subtle, or the imagery, or the ideas that are being expressed. We want to assess how it's being said, considering maybe how the word choice or ordering of ideas, sentence structure, contribute to the meaning of the passage. Then we're going to explain what that means to us, tying your analysis of the passage back to the significance of the text as a whole. Now, remember, if you've seen some of my other videos, you'll know that the thesis statement is the star of the show of your essay. Everything you do in this paper has to tie back to your thesis in some way, shape, or form. If you're writing a paper about liking cats more than dogs, you want to make sure that when you're analyzing text, you are trying to say something that proves that cats are better than dogs. You want to really bring that home. We want to say, I know the text didn't blatantly say it, but it's insinuating that cats are better than dogs when it said X, Y, and Z. Maybe the imagery is telling me that they like the cats better than the dogs, and so do I. So, then you're going to repeat that process. You're going to take your context, you're going to quote it, and then you're going to analyze it by giving some additional support for your thesis and topic sentence. So, here is an example. This is from James McBride's The Color of Water. I have not read it. I'm going to be so real with you, but I like to have variety in my examples, because if I had it my way, every example would link back to Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, because I am a super fan of Mr. Ray Bradbury. So, I don't know if you've read The Color of Water. I haven't, but let's see. If they did a good job with their paragraph, we don't need to have read The Color of Water. They've got a topic sentence introducing the topic. An important difference between James and his mother is their method of dealing with the pain they experience. So this is what they're trying to argue in their paragraph. They're paraphrasing the text. You'll notice that we know this because of the in-text citations of page numbers. While James turns inward, his mother Ruth turns outward, starting a new relationship, moving to a different place, keeping herself busy. Ruth herself describes that even as a young girl, she had an urge to run, to feel the freedom and the movement of her legs pumping as fast as they can. So the author segues into the actual citation. The citation's talking about how Ruth is describing herself as a young girl. But before that, they even prime us. They set us up to understand that what they're trying to argue with this quote is that James is turning inward while Ruth is turning outward. So we're already being told what behavior we're looking for before we even get the quote. That's a great use of things. We don't have to do that always, but that is an option. Then we get to see a little bit more quotage. As an adult, Ruth still feels the urge to run, so showing she's still outwardly running. She's following her second husband's death. James points out her behavior. While she weebled and wobbled and leaned, she did not fall. She responded with speed and motion. She would not stop moving. We get a third quote. As she biked, walked, rode the bus all around the city, she kept moving as if her life depended on it, which in some ways it did. She ran as she had done most of her life, but this time she was running for her own sanity. Now, the one thing I don't like about this is the author has pulled 3 quotes back to back. I personally, now you don't have to follow my advice, but I do advise that you take each quote individually and really give it time to breathe. To say, okay, This is the quote I'm using. This is the takeaway from this quote. When you have 3 quotes together, the point you're making can blur together because it's hard to tie each quote to each piece of analysis. So it can get a little muddy. So I personally would say if the author had stuck to just one quote, it probably would have been a bit more clear. I would say, quote, give my analysis, then I could pull out one of these other quotes to reiterate my point, to solidify that point in a new light. But they didn't do that, so let's just see how they analyze these 3 quotes together. Ruth's motion is a pattern of responding to the tragedy in her life. Since as a girl she did not sit and think about her abusive father and her trapped life in the Suffolk store, she instead left home, moved on, and tried something different. She did not analyze the connections between pain and understanding, action and response, even though she seems to be understanding them. So as an adult, she's continuing the pattern, although her running is modified by her responsibilities to child and home. That's pretty deep, right? You'll notice that's not something you might pull from the quotes themselves. That's the great thing about writing. You can argue something that nobody's ever thought of before. You can point out something that nobody's ever thought of before. It's all about opening your reader's eyes to a new possibility and a new point of view to this writing. And that's what's so interesting about it. So that's why we want to make sure that we're not just summarizing the text, that we're taking it deeper. We're saying, look what I noticed. Look what I think's happening based on this evidence. They gave me the evidence, but I drew this conclusion myself. And the author of this piece does a really good job. So that's just one example. We've also got Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, a classic. So let's see an example of how they are using the analysis. So this is a body paragraph, a very small one, mind you. But we're going to see how they use their claim, their topic sentence, if you will. They give their evidence, and then they give their analysis. So we start with our topic of this debate. The physical descriptions of the laboratory and the main house in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde metaphorically point to the Gothic elements in the novel. So that's their focus on when they're analyzing the text. This is what they want to focus on. They're arguing that there is a metaphorical point of Gothic elements in Jekyll and Hyde. Here is our quote. The main house had a great air of wealth and comfort, while the laboratory door, which was equipped with neither bell nor knocker, was blistered and stained. Now, I do notice that they have 2 pieces of evidence together. This is a little different. They're giving 2 different descriptions because they're showing kind of the duality. So, again, this is your paper. Sometimes you can have fun with it. You can patchwork these 2 quotes together because they go hand in hand, and using them next to each other is how you're able to make this analysis here. This analysis being the comforting and welcoming look of the main house, which we see in the quote, the first half of the quote, is in sharp contrast to the door of the laboratory in the second half of the quote, which does not even have a bell to invite people in. The laboratory door is eerie and Gothic, highlighting the abnormal and mystical events that take place behind it. Notice they had a basic description of each, and they used the duality of these descriptions to make their analysis. Something that people probably wouldn't notice reading through because they're on 2 separate pages. Isn't that neat? Here are some broad questions you can ask yourself when you're looking at your quote and trying to decide how to analyze it. You find a quote, you go, this might be good for arguing my point. Now let's talk about it. Well, what is the thesis or central idea of the text as a whole? Who's the intended audience, and how do you know that? What questions are the author addressing? How is the author structuring the text? How does the structure aid the point the author's trying to make? What are some key parts of the text, and why are they the key parts? How do the key parts of the text interrelate to each other? How do the key parts of the text relate to the thesis of the story? What does the author do to generate interest in their argument? Is it effective or ineffective, and why? How does the author convince the reader of their argument's merit? Its reliability. What evidence is provided in support of the thesis? And usually when I say the thesis, I mean your thesis. How is that proving your point that you're trying to make about the paper? Is the evidence in the text of the author's text convincing, and why or why not? Has the author anticipated maybe some counter views, some views that oppose his, and how does he anticipate that? How, or she or they, how do they kind of counteract that to really prove their point? And is the author's reasoning sound? Why or why not? I mean, if the author, or if we're just focusing on the character's point of view, would you really trust Jekyll and Hyde? Would you say they're a reliable narrator? Chances are no. So you can ask that about any author, whether they're fictional or not. Now, these are just broad questions if you don't have a thesis in mind yet. This can usually help you generate a thesis, because if you know the main point of the paper and the key parts of the text and the main points of interest and the main arguments, that can help you because you can better navigate your way around the text and what you're arguing in the text. It can help you craft a thesis based on whatever prompt the professor gives you. Here are some more questions you can use to jumpstart your analysis journey. You can ask yourself questions about the context of evidence. You pull your quote out of the story. You say, okay, what do I need to tell my audience, my readers, about where this evidence came from? Maybe there's a story behind the evidence you need to disclose. Maybe there's a historical situation in which the evidence was created. So just making sure that there's enough background that the audience will understand why you're using the text evidence. You can also ask yourself what the evidence implies about your own argument, again, your thesis. So what aspects of this evidence would I like my audience to notice? What do I want to point out to them? Why did I choose this part of evidence to use to prove my point? Why does the evidence matter to my own argument? Why is it important in some ways, but maybe not in others? Like, what parts do I want to highlight for my point, and what parts aren't important to highlight in this point? How does the evidence contradict or confirm my argument? Does it do both? That happens on occasion. So is it confirming what I'm saying, or is it kind of a counter argument? And how does this evidence evolve or change my argument? Does it, broaden my argument and say maybe it's not this specific, maybe it's something a little more broad? Or does it completely change my argument? Am I wrong? Is my evidence proving me wrong? Who knows? Here's just a works cited page for all of these sources that I used to explain this to you today. These are awesome sources from different colleges, and honestly, you are more than welcome to look out for them. I know that I post all of my slides, so then it might be a little easier for you to click on the link if you've got the slide open. So you can find any of my slides on our website as well. That's all we've got for today. I do hope this helped you understand analyzing text a little bit better. I do know that I will be putting out a video where I'm, annotating text, which can also be a really great precursor to understanding how to analyze. I know that I have a small analysis worksheet that'll be posted where it's got some questions that you can kind of fill out like a worksheet to help you decide what you want to do with your quotes. There's also the analysis paper worksheet where you can put quotes into, categories with your topics for your paper and really categorize them, organize them based on what you're trying to argue with each quote, and you can put a little bit of analysis next to those, and it's a really great organizer for before you actually write the paper. It makes it really easy to when you get to the paper writing process. But just a friendly reminder that if you're still finding yourself with questions, comments, concerns, even after looking at all those resources, you can always find us at the Writing Center. We are here to help you master all things to do with writing and revising your papers, so feel free to stop by with a draft that you need us to look at, or with questions for how to tackle your writing needs. We're always happy to help. For more information on this topic or more, you can also feel free to check our website for information and ways to meet with a tutor to help you with all your writing needs. Whether it be online, in person, or email, we are always happy to help. So with that said, we do hope to see you soon, and bye!